Hey, my name is Nick Corrado, director of Lygophobia, Monophobia, Just Another Walk Through the Woods, and the currently unreleased short, The Guy. Today I'm going to be walking you guys through the first two movies that I mentioned, Lygophobia and Monophobia. Both of these movies are part of what I like to call the Phobia series, currently just made up of, the first two movies. Lygophobia is the first, Monophobia is the second. They are directly related with certain events happening in both movies that directly relate the two. So right here, we're starting off. The main issue that I have with this one, looking back, is the fact that in the first, 6 minutes, not a lot happens, and there isn't a lot of dialogue. The main reason I chose to do that is because I am more of a fan of visual storytelling. As you can see right here, you can see me kind of looking through my phone, looking at this area that I'm going to go to. I'm trying to show through visuals that I am an urban explorer. I'm going to this abandoned building. I parked secludedly. And I'm just doing my thing. I didn't really convey that too well. And the biggest complaint that I heard is that, I should have been talking throughout this segment. But I fixed that in the sequel. So when we get to Monophobia, you'll see how there's consistent talking throughout the whole movie. There's always going to be dialogue or something going on. My biggest problem with modern film is that a lot of the times the movie kind of holds the viewer's hand and they tell them everything that's going on, and they just treat the viewer as if they were so young that they can't pick up on context clues throughout the movie. So I wanted the viewer to kind of pick this up and not, have the answer shoved right in their face. That's pretty much going to be the theme of both movies here. I don't really explain too much until one particular scene in Monophobia where I feel like I do kind of shove that message into your face. But what the Phobia series is kind of based around is there's this demonic entity that takes people that are, going into places that they shouldn't be, people like this guy or the group in Monophobia, and he puts them in this, I want to say it's like a loop, like a time loop, and he takes them to different places, different really creepy places, kind of tries to break them down and make it seem like everything doesn't make any sense, and see what they become from that, see how it changes them. I always like the idea because it's probably the scariest thing to me. Like, one small mistake that you make can drastically change your life and the lives of a lot of people around you. So, just something as simple as, because this guy's an urban explorer, he's obviously gone into a bunch of abandoned places before, something as simple as doing what he does as a hobby, but he does it at the wrong place and the wrong time, and he gets caught up on something that he just cannot control. That to me is absolutely terrifying. But the series did not start out like that at all. I originally planned to make Lygophobia just a little, Halloween video of creepy places with creepy things going on in them. It wasn't until much later on in the filming process and, production that I actually realized, hey, I kind of have a unique idea here. This guy goes exploring, he gets wrapped into this whole thing, and he just teleports all over the place. It was something that I never saw explored in a found footage movie before, and I wanted to kind of push that concept and see just what I could come up with. And Lygophobia is what I want to say is like the proof of concept. Like, this shows that an idea like that can be done, but I can safely say that it wasn't done as well as I hoped it would be. And this is mainly due to the fact that it started off as something completely different, and that's why I think Monophobia is definitely the better one out of the two. Monophobia had an actual script written out before filming began. This one is mostly improv, actually. I never went into these things knowing what I was going to say, knowing how I was going to react to these things. I just said, hey, let's go to this place, let's film a scene. And I said, do this behind me, or just pop out and do this. I never wrote down scripts or exactly what I was going to do or say. So a lot of this is just made up on the spot as soon as we get to a place. In that sense, I wanted it to kind of feel almost like a haunted house, like a haunted house attraction. You go into a bunch of different sets in that haunted house. You're walking through it, and nothing is exactly the same, but it's all held together by this theme. It's difficult to explain, but if you go into a haunted house, think of this movie as one of those haunted houses, and you'll kind of understand it a little bit more. Coming up, you're going to kind of see an idea of what I mean by that whole haunted house concept. See, we're seeing right here that there's something fishy going on, and then all of a sudden, the door slams behind me, and I get teleported, for lack of a better word, to a different place. These transitions between one place to the next, I like to call them jumps. I am jumping to a different area completely. So what I wanted to do originally is just, whenever my flashlight went out, I would go to a different place. It wasn't until later on in the process of filming that I realized that I wanted it to be controlled by some entity. You see this much more in Monophobia, but here it's going to look like whenever the flashlight goes out, that's when I jump. That was just me not planning correctly. So coming up really soon, you're going to see another person who's trapped in the loop. This is my friend Rory, and his entrance is a little bit more comedic looking back at it than I would have hoped. I hope that upon first viewing this, people were a little shocked by it, but looking back and knowing the person that Rory is, that's just a little funny. So I wanted to convey that he saw me, and then he instantly was transported to another place. He instantly jumped. This is just another example of that entity using everything in its power to really break down this character and just destroy his reality. This is where things are going to start to pick up. It's going to go at a real fast pace. This scene in particular, I wanted to include just so that people can't be like, oh, why didn't he whip out his phone? Why isn't he using his phone? This is showing that, hey, I can't get service. I'm trying my best to contact somebody from the outside world, but I just simply cannot do that. Behind me, just something to show the viewers, just something to keep them interested. There's something going on behind me. Obviously, I can't see that. But then this is going to slam, and now I'm somewhere else. Fun fact, this whole building here has actually been demolished. It was demolished pretty shortly after filming. I love this little kick coming in here. Just kick that chair right over. This next scene is going to take place at an abandoned slaughterhouse, and I really like it in particular because, to me, it creeps me out the most. Put yourself in my character's shoes here, and consider that you're there, and you just see a giant wire spool rolling towards you with that really eerie rolling sound. That's just so bizarre and so creepy. And I really like it just for that simplicity. This is another example, again, of how everything is improvised. We picked that wire spool up, and we just kind of rolled with it. Forgive that pun. This whole area, this slaughterhouse, is going to be used again in the movie later on, but we're going to be upstairs, and I'll point that scene out when it comes through. John actually had the idea that in order to spook me off, he would make a noise, and again, we rolled with it. I tried to show that I bonked my head right into that locker. Not sure if many people picked up on that one. This, again, is a perfect example of how we improvised. My buddy Jerry is going to be throwing rocks just randomly to make a very loud noise. This actually was something that he just came up with. When I was filming, he just started doing it. The first time he did it, it scared the living shit out of me because I thought that this place was collapsing on top of us. This scene also, we filmed it when that whole clown craze was going on, and we were so worried that somebody was going to see us in this clown mask and freak out. Luckily, that didn't happen, though, and we successfully got this. I remember this scene in particular took a lot of takes to get perfectly down. This is the scene that bothers me the most because after, making Monophobia, I realized that this one really kind of screws with the continuity. This is where I realize, my character realizes, that whenever his light goes out, that's when you jump. Obviously, this isn't the case, and it is that entity pulling strings, but this one kind of just ruins that whole idea. We didn't have a sequel in mind when we made this movie. We didn't have a further story in mind either, like I said earlier. So it was kind of a standalone thing, and then my buddy Mike, who really loved this first one, wanted to expand upon this story and further it, flesh it out a little bit. So that's when me and him got together when we started writing the sequel.
Is there anybody here?
Well, I do like the idea that this guy now knows how, the jumps work, and he thinks that he can control them. I ultimately prefer the idea much more of an actual entity being in control of this and just psychologically breaking somebody down with it. This right here, this is the roof of that slaughterhouse that I was just in. I'm probably like right on top of where my character last was. This is one of the first things that we shot, actually. This is part of the teaser. We had to shoot this scene, I think, 3 different times on 3 different nights. I had to get so many candles. But it was just because it was either too dark because my camera wasn't picking up enough light, or I wanted to throw more things in, and ultimately, we settled on this one. We originally had the figure there in a robe that I made out of a tablecloth, but that shot was too dark, so we couldn't do that, and then Jerry, the actor who was in the robe, wasn't available the night that we were filming. So right now, we have people stomping on top of the roof of that, and then throwing boards down, which I feel, this one board that fell, not that one, but this one coming up, perfect. I love the way that you could see that board fell, and you don't see anything up there. What is that? Another situation of improvising on the set is I was reading that, and I was going to try to form it into the story, but it ended up not working. This is actually the Lehigh River. I jumped in there. It was really cold. It was really gross. It was raining that day. But I wanted to push this concept as far as I possibly could, and I took it to a river. I thought that was pretty neat. Nobody was going to expect that, so these next few scenes are what I like to call, like, transition scenes. Because this movie was so poorly thought out, the editing process was much like a puzzle. You had to put pieces together that fit. So there were some scenes that began with me walking, but then I didn't have a scene that would, transition well. So I would need to film a different scene somewhere else that ended with me walking, so that way I can piece them together well. This one in particular, it ends with me walking, and then I'm walking again here. I turn the flashlight on and I'm walking. This was shot much before that previous scene. So then this one is me running, and now I'm running again in a forest. I needed these transition scenes in order to put in different pieces. This scene right here I called Horse Mask Creek because of that horse mask, and it is probably one of my best delivered oh fucks ever of all time. It's not something I should be proud of, but I really like the delivery of that one right there. So this is where it's finally starting to wind down. And this scene right here, I actually get hit with my car. I did have to speed it up a little bit. I did have to put some sound effects in there. But yes, my friend John was driving my car, and him and Alec did hit me. Alec brings up that scene in Monophobia, so keep that in mind. Here is the final location. And with this location, I try to really drive home the fact that this entity put all of these pieces in place to really break this character down and just make him as uncomfortable as possible.
Hello? Is there anybody in here?
This is what I wanted to kind of
Please, I don't know where I am.
convey as the layer almost, or like just the final level of this guy's hell. He's going to look around and see some of his personal belongings. Those are actually my shirts, my shoes, and then my friend Alec took some pictures of me. Obviously, I told him to, but this guy just finds pictures of himself in this weird, decrepit, abandoned cement factory. And this is when he loses it. There's somebody just watching him. He fell into this trap, and he realizes that it was all planned all along, and it was eventually leading to this. So it's just a bizarre thing. This, oh God, I cringe every time I look at that. Now, this dialogue right here is all in post. I went out into a forest and just started shouting this. That's why it doesn't really fit that much. But this right here is what I'm most proud of.
Why not?
I feel like why not was the theme of this movie. Why is this happening? You know, why not? Why wouldn't it be happening? This, Alec is actually beating me with a baseball bat. And it really hurt, and I was sore for quite some time. But just like Thor, he is making the mistake of not going for the head. I chose to kind of left the fate of this character open-ended, even though it definitely looks like he dies right there. I wanted to, if I did want to make sequels, I wanted to use this character again and expand upon it. Not saying that I will, but I'm also not saying that I won't. These credits right here are made by my friend Aaron Dolgus, and I think that they are amazing. We had a running joke for a little while that these credits were the best part of Lygophobia. Do I think that it's wrong? I don't know. The credits are really good, and the movie is kind of mediocre. But with that being said, I definitely think that Monophobia is a vast improvement to this idea. And I much prefer Monophobia to Lygophobia. But still, it's my work, and I worked really hard on it, so I'm definitely proud of Lygophobia. And here it is, the most generic kind of opening to a found footage movie ever. Why did I choose to start it off like this? I don't know. But I did. It was different, and it kind of starts it off with a different tone than Lygophobia had. So here we have it. We have Paul, Dan, Aaron, and Alec, the group of Monophobia. This scene, the opening scene, was actually the last scene that we shot for it, and it was absolutely terrible to plan and film. Getting everybody together on a certain day was really difficult. But I feel like it turned out very, very, very well. And just the start of this, you definitely sense, like I said earlier, you definitely sense a different tone. There's much more going on to keep you invested, to keep you watching, interested. I wanted to kind of make these characters almost relatable and just give you a good group of characters to watch interact. It's definitely good that we all were friends long before filming to give off a sense of connection. So earlier on, even though I did say that Monophobia had an actual script and that it was more planned out, this one I actually let the actors basically just, say whatever they want. I had certain keywords and phrases that I wanted them to include, but I really just let them roll with it and give their own spin to it, to just make it seem more realistic, I guess. Make it seem like it's something that these guys would actually be saying to each other. So, a little backstory on their, in-movie group. They're a bunch of YouTubers who, come together and they film themselves exploring abandoned places. They're urban explorers, and they've gotten pretty popular from it. It's not necessarily flat out said that, but that's what happened. I wanted to kind of put little watermarks in the corner of the screen because everyone's using something different to record. Like, for instance, Dan is using an iPhone. Paul right here that you're looking through, he's filming with the contour camera, and Alec is filming with a DSLR. So they all have their own unique... You could definitely tell which one is being used at a certain time, but I wanted to show you who is actually holding these things. and I scrapped that idea just because you see them holding these cameras so often. Like you see, Dan's got his phone out. Paul, you could clearly see he has the contour, and Alec, you'll eventually see, is holding his DSLR. Well, you actually saw that already. So they're just kind of, messing around, giving the viewers of their YouTube channel, something to watch. But they have no idea that they're getting into this loop.
Nothing like an insane asylum there.
They come across, well, Paul and Dan are going to come across these, the clothes here. And that's, obviously, if you watch the first one, which I'm hoping you did, you see that that's the guy's clothes from the first movie. And then, hey, look, it's Rory from the first movie as well. So they're going to investigate that. And I have so many favorite things about Monophobia, but one of my favorite things about it is the banter back and forth between Alec and Aaron here. They are just so good at showing that they, host this YouTube thing and they have the right personalities for it, and they are just so enjoyable to watch. In this scene in the not the slaughterhouse, in this scene in the cement factory, I have so many clips of them just going back and forth, talking about stupid stuff that obviously I couldn't put in the movie, but when I make a behind the scenes later on, I'm definitely going to include those takes. And I love this one about Chowder. They just kill it in this role, and Aaron in particular, I love for a scene coming up. These two guys just really kill it in giving off an egocentric, a very egotistical, assholey type YouTuber persona. And it works so well. And then I love how Dan and Paul are both kind of not really there. Like, they're the typical, behind the camera guy. And Aaron and Alec are definitely, the in front of the camera personalities. This group dynamic I love, and I think that the whole cast really killed it. But now we're getting into the loop. These characters are going to be thrown into it, and everything around them is going to break. So I thought the best way to, just really right off the bat, connect these two movies, the cement factory, and then we're having Rory. Rory's character, you see him for a brief second in Lygophobia, but now you're going to get more backstory on him. And that's what I truly love about this movie. It really takes the idea of the first, and like I said, it just expands upon it. It gives it an actual story. And because of this second movie, Monophobia, it truly makes Lygophobia a much better movie than it was without its sequel. Now that we are kind of coming into some exposition and some backstory, I really have to hand it to Mike Battaglia, the co-writer of this movie, because he came to me with this idea to make this demonic entity, demonic, and kind of its own religious cult-like figure that does this. And without him, the sequel would never have happened, and this story definitely would not have been formed. So I can't thank him enough for what he's brought to this. A lot of the dialogue revolving around the religious aspects or stuff like that, that's all on him. He's the one who came up with that. So, again, he just really knocked it out of the park. This, right here, this is what I love Aaron's character for. The way he reacts to this and just doesn't care about anything else besides going for that YouTube gold here. Perfect personification of a typical asshole YouTuber. I love it. And then here, you're going to have me, my character. I am playing the entity. Why? I'm not sure. I guess it's just because, that's the form that the entity took in the last movie, just to kind of show you that it's the same type of thing. But in this one, I do also show that this entity could take whatever form it really wants to. Now, what you're hearing in the background, that's obviously me and Rory fighting. I'm beating the living hell out of a bag of clothes, old clothes that I had, and I'm just beating it with a baseball bat, and Rory and I are just kind of sitting in the opposite room, just yelling at each other. This was funny. because Rory would just make some really stupid noises sometimes, and it would just make all of us start laughing. This this whole shoot was just so much fun, and I absolutely loved the feeling of just being here with a bunch of my good friends and just making a movie. I feel like the reason that this movie worked so well is just because of the connection that the entire cast had. And I mean, I'm sure that goes for, any other movie that's made, but I don't know, it just something feels really special about the way the cast interacts. So here we're going to have them discovering the body of Rory. And fun fact about Rory, since the cement factory scene and this scene were shot in different times, obviously, Rory lost his shirt. So his shirt looks a little different in this scene than it does in the last one.
I don't care. Just relax.
These characters right now are already starting to lose it. They are being psychologically affected by what this entity is doing, and his plan is starting to take effect. This is where they truly break down, and they realize that they're in way over their heads, and something really, really, really bad is happening. I wanted specifically to show off that Aaron, who was originally shown to not care about anything, he's really being affected by this. And this is just the whole idea of what would happen to you in this situation, and it's just showing off, how it affects different people. Paul right here is screaming. We had to do this take countless times, and he had, I can't imagine the headache that he had. On that topic, what I try to do in this movie, and what I do in other ones, is I put the actors through so many takes of the same scene, because I knew that once we get to the final few takes, they are going to be so exhausted and so drained and just stressed out, and that's exactly how they're supposed to be in the movie. That's exactly how they're supposed to be portraying their characters. What better way to do that than to actually make them feel like that? And it was kind of bad on my part because I was really pushing them, but I mean, they all said that they were comfortable with it at the start. I told them that I was going to do this, and because I was so forward about it in the planning stage, I was relentless. But I really feel like that brought out some genuine stress and frustration and just anger, and it worked so much better for it. For example, I'm a really big fan of the performance Alec gives here for that very reason.
Yeah, but we all agreed to it.
Yeah, well, I didn't want to do it, though.
Then why the fuck
Especially that little laugh that he gives right there. That's something that he only does when he's genuinely angry. And from that moment, I could tell that he was really in this character, and he was really feeling that role. That's why I feel like that method works, especially for a movie like this. And now here comes Scientist Alec with his retelling of the events that happened in Lygophobia when him and John hit me with the car.
we were
This is...
driving?
You know what? I mentioned earlier that there was a moment of blatant exposition. This is definitely one of those moments, but there's a bigger one coming up later on in the movie. This one, it just hits you in the face, direct callback to the first movie. Although it does seem almost like lazy writing, I do enjoy the fact that it is a direct callback to the first one, and instantly, if you, especially if you just watch the first one, you would piece those two together and obviously tell that they're in the same situation. So now we have another argument coming up between them, and this one, the entity kind of uses it to, in the confusion of this confrontation here, the entity uses it to just further break them down and confuse them. Like, boom, they're in a different place now, and now they're missing somebody. They're missing Aaron. Why was Aaron the first one to go? Because Aaron's like the whole ringleader. He is the head honcho in charge of this group, and without him, they're kind of like directionless. This is when they start to freak out. Also, because they are such a close-knit group of friends, obviously if your friend is gone, you're going to be very upset. And now this is where the whole title kind of comes into play. Lygophobia is a fear of the dark, or fear of dark places. And you could tell that because that you were in creepy, decrepit, dark places, that's where the title comes from. Monophobia is a little different. Monophobia is the fear of being alone. This is a group of 4 people, and when they become separated, that's when they start to be in actual danger. They don't want to be on their own. They want to stay in this group because, there's safety in numbers. But if you're alone, there's no telling what's going to happen to you. They don't know what's going on. They don't know what's going on with Aaron. He's just gone. So they're trying their best to just make sense of this whole situation. This scene right here is actually shot in the exact same area of forest that the previous scene was in.
Dan?
And this is a cut scene from Lygophobia. I originally wanted to have my character walk in on somebody killing themselves. And obviously we have this going on here.
Oh, what the fuck?
That gunshot sound effect was actually really difficult to come up with. I originally wanted to have an actual gunshot, obviously not on location, but like put in post, and it just sounded way too fake and cheesy. So I decided to just go practical, and in that scene, I had a water bottle that was filled with baking soda and vinegar. Obviously, when these two things come together, it makes a loud popping noise. So we did that, and I was just literally behind that little area throwing these water bottles at the ground. This scene right here is in my brother's house. We originally wanted to shoot this at another abandoned location, but this is, I think, the second to last scene that we filmed, and I didn't want to use another abandoned location just because I don't like the feeling of always being watched. Obviously you're not, but I just feel like we're going to get caught or fined or thrown out of one of these places for filming this. And I didn't want that to happen. So I chose my brother's house, and I'm so thankful he let me use it on such short notice. And it's not a terrible thing. It is kind of out of place, but still, this movie is meant to be confusing. And with the fact that it's a loop, you could kind of throw these characters in any place. As long as something sinister is going on, it could all be considered to take place in the loop. So here, the person that I am hitting his hand, that's Jake. Jake Rodriguez. He is amazing. This effect coming up right here, though, is not amazing. That was terrible. I didn't have enough time to really do the special effects work to make it look like the hammer went in the head, so instead I kind of put a band-aid over it in the form of a static cut. So that's very obviously a fake hand, and this right here is that blatant exposition scene. It is so in your face, this is what's going on, but I felt like I needed to do it after kind of allowing people to interpret this story their own way. I wanted to show them what I actually want it to be. And this conversation right here with Alec and the entity, he's basically trying to turn him into what Rory was. Rory was kind of like,
Killed him.
for lack of a better term, like his lackey, his henchman. And he's giving this opportunity to Alec. He just killed his right-hand man, so he wants to get another one. He wants Alec to take up Rory's mantle and see if he could trust Alec more than he could do Rory. This whole sequence here, even though I'm not exactly impressed with how on the nose it is with exposition, I'm really impressed with it because this just goes to show how much more thought out and well put together this movie is compared to Lygophobia. I wouldn't be able to have a cross-cutting section like this with two overlapping stories going on at the exact same time if I didn't plan it out months ahead of filming. This whole exchange with Paul and Dan, and even the next scene with Alec being in the tree, this is the first thing we ever shot for this movie. And the amount of planning and everything that went into this, it's really what makes this film such a success. Everyone involved really put everything that they had into this. This was a very low-budget production. This was, made by a couple of college students, and I am still so very proud of how this turned out, no matter what anyone says, really, because, I did this. I could do it. And this is one of those things that, like, if I actually do become a big director, I would like to go back to this series and actually make it with real actors, with a real budget, and real effects, because This concept is something that's really neat and really unique, and I would love to see how it can be pushed and expanded upon. So right here is where I tried to show that the entity can take different forms, whatever it wants. You could literally see me right there, and now the entity is taking the form of Aaron. Which is really unsettling for Alec. Now we're back here. We're done with Alec's little section, and now we're looking through Alec's camera, which Paul runs into, and then we have a perfect example of things not going the way that they were supposed to in the script. Coming up, Alec is going to be hanging in this tree, and he was supposed to be hanging upside down, but when we put him upside down, he just, it wasn't going to work, and Alec got hurt pretty badly after we tried it, I think like 1 or 2 times. So we just settled on this, and then we threw blood all over him and tied him up like we were going to. And it doesn't look bad. It still doesn't look bad. Alec is still pretty good doing this. And then we have it. Just like the cement factory was in the last one, this church is, you know, the big one, the last level, like I said. I chose to shoot this scene in the daytime, mainly because it gives a different vibe. Everything else before this is shot at night. But this one, I wanted to show that it was something incredibly different from everything else. This is where I want, like, the layer to be. It's another example of me trying to visually tell a story and show something to the audience without directly blatantly telling them. You're going to see a bunch of bodies here, and those bodies should be pretty recognizable. Why is there a bunch of bodies in here? Is this a room that the entity keeps vessels that he uses to then go out and about? I don't know, but this is stuff that I want the viewer to ask about and make up their own theories and just think about it and dwell on it. Some of my favorite movies do that kind of stuff, and that's something I really wanted to emulate for my own work. I just love that. Here we have them discovering the bodies of their 2 friends, Aaron and Alec. Alec's camera is obviously right there, and that's going to be used to record, just like that. To me, there's something that's really unsettling and eerie about a camera that's just been left on, and it's just recording with no operator. Like that, it's at such an odd angle, and you know it shouldn't be on, but it is, and it's still, it just, something about it. I don't know what it is, but it's just so uncomfortable. And here, as a finale, we're playing again with that theme. What do you become? Here we have Paul kind of frantically begging and pleading to be like how Alec was, and to see what he saw, and to just have some kind of hope to make it through this situation. Whatever he possibly could to just kind of get out of it. I also really like the performance that Dan just gave right there, shouting and just begging Paul to stop. He actually recorded that, not on location, but he recorded that in a movie theater. At the time, both of us worked at a movie theater, and we were able to just go in and shout, so that's what he did. Oh, it's over. Okay. Well, I got a little carried away throughout this, and I definitely rambled a little bit. But that was my 2 movies. I am so incredibly proud of them. Watching them again like this, it makes me so happy that I did that. And that Lygophobia is 2 years old today, and Monophobia is 1 year old. And everyone involved, I can't thank you enough for everything that you did and how everyone supported me through this. So, thank you guys so much.